Are these the best versions of these figures ever made? Hey everyone, it's Rustbutt Collector here, and today we are taking a look at one of these two MaFex Star Wars action figures. This is going to be an honest unboxing and review. I'm going to split this into two videos. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Clone Trooper figure. Both of these figures were provided by Plaza Japan. I'm going to link them down in the description below where you can pick up a lot of the import figures like this, and if you use code RUSTBELT, you get 5% off your order. These figures aren't really specific promotions, so my review will be completely honest and upfront about what I think about both of these figures. I have been wanting to have a MaFex Clone Trooper in hand for a long time. These import figures are often touted as some of the best in the industry in terms of articulation, maybe not so much in terms of sculpt. So we gotta see if this is the best Clone Trooper action figure of all time, or if it's maybe just a good Clone Trooper figure, or maybe a really bad Clone Trooper figure. We will find out today in this video, but this packaging is pretty straightforward. It's pretty standard. Open window, the figure's inside, you've got some stuff on the bottom, and I believe these holographic stickers here are to help make sure that this is an official MaFex figure, not a bootleg, because a lot of these import figures sadly have just bootlegs floating around on the internet. But yeah, on the back here you can see Phase 1, Phase 2 Clone Trooper. Basically swap the helmet out, the body's going to be the same. And with that introduction out of the way, let's break this thing open and take a look at the figure. We've got to get it out of the plastic shell just to see what is all there. And thank goodness that shell is there because these are all kind of floating loosely in the packaging. But you can see here, we have an assortment of swappable hands. We have 2 blasters, 2 helmets, and the figure itself. And it feels pretty good in hand. It's got some heft to it. It's got a really nice glossy coat to that armor. I think that lends itself more to a Phase 1 design than a Phase 2 design. I always think of clones in their Phase 1 armor as being shiny and Phase 2 being a lot more grungy and battle-worn. We have a lot of great accessories to get into, and I believe back here well, I'm sure that's fine, we don't need those hands, but in the back here we have this really nice stand. So you have a clip here and an arm and the base. This allows for some really sweet dynamic poses. We'll take a look at that more in depth here shortly. So we've got the figure out of the packaging now. I swapped out the hands so that it could hold the DC-15 carbine. That blaster rifle looks really, really nice with those little silver details. As I mentioned, he comes with this nice display stand. It has a waist clip here that would snap around the figure's torso, or maybe even some other joints just in case you want to do different dynamic poses. It's got an arm that can be adjusted in a lot of different ways to support him in different ways, and I do like that it's also clear just so that it doesn't really like stand out on the display, whether it's on a shelf or what have you. There's little screws at each joint that can be tightened down so that this joint doesn't have as much play, and then you could really lock it into place. And honestly, I think this could work well with like a jet trooper. You know, you could extend the arm as far as possible, have that clip around their waist, and then you'd have them in the air on a clear base so that it wouldn't be, you know, really visible on the shelf, but then it would be a really cool way to have a dynamic pose with them. There are a wide assortment of hands here, including pointer fingers, trigger fingers, grip hands, and these open gesturing hands. It's a pretty nice selection. They all just swap onto the body with this little peg joint system, but I wish that peg were a little bit larger because it does concern me that they might break at some point, and you don't get extras, unlike with Hot Toys. For blasters, you get this beautiful DC-15 blaster. It looks so good. It is very accurate to the movie, not the Clone Wars style. This is the correct version of a live-action DC-15 blaster rifle. It looks great with those little silver details, and that sculpt work is really, really precise. You also get the smaller DC-15 carbine, which has that same crisp detail, as well as some nice silver and gold, brassy colored little details painted on there. And of course, last but not least, you can pop that head right off and swap on the Phase 2 Trooper. The Phase 2 helmet looks really nice. It's got some great sculpted detail with like the painted in mouth as well, painted little lines on the side and around to the back. As with other toys of the Phase 2 armor, I can't really describe what is off about it. It just doesn't seem quite like it's like the movie sculpt. It just seems like a half a bubble off. But of the Clone Trooper helmets that we've gotten in the Phase 2 configuration from other brands and in this scale, I would say it's one of the better sculpts. In terms of articulation, that is where this figure actually really shines. Like you can see here with this is a kneeling pose with a figure that does not have single jointed knees. It has a standard double jointed knee, which doesn't have that pivot, but still the hips drop down and let you get him into a really nice crouched action pose. Now, as is common with figures like MaFex and SH Figuarts, a lot of these import figures, they just have amazing articulation. So the shoulders can swivel forward and back. they can hinge out. The shoulder pads are actually affixed to the chest plate, so that leaves a free range of motion for the shoulders, and the elbows can crunch in very nicely as well. There's a hinge and swivel at the wrist. Torso can bend forward and back quite a bit, and as I mentioned earlier, the hips actually have a drop down motion, so you pull the hip down and it allows the armor to slip underneath the codpiece there, giving you full range of motion for a kneeling position, but if they're in a more standard standing position, that hip just pops right back up into place, and it makes the armor a little bit more seamless. So for a figure released back in, I think, 2015 or 2016, this is definitely the best Clone Trooper at the time. Now, of course, in recent years, we've had a lot of competition for maybe that title of Best Clone Trooper action figure, but looking back on a time when the best clone, especially in this scale, would have been Black Series, this figure knocks it out of the park. The articulation, range of motion, and even armor sculpt is just next to none here. This would have been the competition at the time, the Hasbro Black Series 1.0 Clone Trooper body. And honestly, the sculpt here is not bad. This is one of my favorite Clone Trooper helmet sculpts, especially in 1/12 scale, but the articulation and range of motion just leaves a lot to be desired. Now, this is the archive edition of the 501st, but it uses the same mold that we would have gotten all the way back in the day, and it's just, yeah, it leaves a lot to be desired. Those joints were not great. There was no way you would get this into a kneeling position without the legs being kind of cockeyed and the torso being skewed. It just was not the best Clone Trooper. If you wanted a clone just standing on the shelf with a blaster, this one was fine. But anything more than that, and really you needed something a little bit better. For many years though, this figure on the right was the direct competition with figures like MaFex and SH Figuarts. This is the Bandai model kit Clone Trooper that you had to assemble from a kit like a model, like a Gundam figure, and truly this one takes the cake for like cheap, affordable, but also extremely posable. For a time, these figures ran like 20 bucks on Big Bad Toy Store, and with everything you got, including the possibility of doing more customs, this was just next to none for Clone Troopers. There was a time on Instagram that I can remember when there was only a few people in the customizing community, and they heavily relied on these Bandai kits to make 501st, 442nd, Commander Cody, like all the major legions that we didn't have in Black Series yet. They were doing them on Bandai kits and they looked incredible. Of course, Hasbro has since released a lot of new Clone Trooper designs, and people have also gotten really good at 3D printing. Now, I really like this figure. It is a lot of fun to pose around. I love the sculpting and the shininess of the armor. And again, I think that personally this one will stay in my collection as a Phase 1 Clone Trooper, because with the shininess of the armor, it's so fitting. This just feels like he walked right off of Camino, and it looks very live action accurate. In fact, one small detail I almost forgot to mention until now is that there is a tiny red dot on the back of that crest. That is a very niche little detail to include for a Phase 1 Clone Trooper, so this one now is definitely going to be my official Phase 1 clone on the shelf. Just a plain, shiny, fresh off of Camino. And it's a really great figure. And I would absolutely argue that it is the best Clone Trooper we have ever gotten in 1/12 scale for the time, because until recently this was kind of what we had to work with, but then Hasbro dropped the 3.0 body. And I know that there's a 2.0 body in between here, but really the 3.0 body encompasses all that is good and great about Hasbro's new Clone Troopers. The floating shoulder pads, the full range of articulation, the crunch into 90 degrees, much more flexibility with the torso forward, back, joints that can flex quite nicely, and also that single jointed knee that lets you get into a crouching position with no trouble at all. And then you follow that up with the AliExpress 3.0 body mold, and there are just a lot of really great Clone Troopers on the market right now. Now, I think terms like better and worse are really relative to what you're gauging the figures off of, whether it's paint apps, sculpt, articulation, that sort of thing. It all just varies from person to person and from figure to figure. I think there's a lot of great sculpt detail on these older clones. They just lack the articulation, and this clone here probably didn't have the price point for a lot of collectors back in the day. They didn't want to spend $30, $40, $50, even $60 on a MaFex or SH Figuarts Clone Trooper back in the day, but the more premium collectors definitely love this one. This is a great figure, and I love having it in the collection finally. It took way too long. It feels so nice to have this very nice sculpt Phase 1 Clone Trooper helmet. on a body that, again, it just feels like they stepped right off of Camino. The articulation is fantastic for some more dynamic poses, and the bulk that this guy has, like kind of boxiness to the body, almost makes it feel like a halfway point between the CGI model and the live-action clones that we got in shows like Ahsoka. They also did a great job nailing the scale for the DC-15 rifle. This thing should be a long blaster, and a lot of companies kind of downsize it by like 50%, it seems like. This is a much larger, more detailed, definitely movie accurate DC-15, and it looks great on the Phase 1 Clone Trooper. So for me, this figure is an absolute win. For its time, it was the best Clone Trooper figure we'd ever gotten, and now it still stands on its own two legs against modern figures. The only thing that could have made this figure better is more repaints. The sad news with a lot of these import figures like SH Figuarts and here with MaFex is that they really just did one clone. They did the Phase 1, Phase 2 combo pack, and then they just never did any more. I believe there was prototypes for one of them doing like a shock trooper, and then we never got it. So even like standard troopers like the 501st were never seen on these more complex and articulated bodies, which is such a shame because they are really perfect. For the time, we could have had every Legion under the sun, and it would have looked amazing on these more advanced body types. I'm personally a big fan of this figure, and I definitely would not turn down the chance to have one or two more just in the collection for some Phase 1 shinies. I've never been huge on collecting Phase 1s, but having a small little squad of them with this body mold and this shiny armor would definitely just kind of scratch the part of my brain that still loves Attack of the Clones for all the clone scenes. But I think that'll do it for this video. There's not much more to say about this figure. It is really awesome, even for its age, and I still think it holds up really well. I love having it in the collection now, kind of completing that lineup of different Clone Trooper molds throughout the years. Major shout out to Plaza Japan for sending this over. Again, there's a link down in the description, and you can use code RUSTBELT to get 5% off your order. They have a lot more to offer than just this Clone Trooper or that Shore Trooper you saw at the beginning of this video, so check them out and hopefully you can find something you like there. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, I'd appreciate you leaving a little thumbs up down there at the bottom. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Have a wonderful evening, noon, or night, depending on when you're watching this video, of course, and as always, be kind to one another, and I'll catch you all in the next one.